Call, please. Jost?
Here.
Kim? Yang?
Here.
Bowie?
Here.
Coleman?
Here.
Johnson?
Here.
Council President Naker?
Here.
6 present, 1 absent, being Councilmember Kim, who is expected shortly.
Thanks so much to everyone for taking time to join us at our City Council meeting today. We invite everyone to join us in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Consent agenda items 3 through 14 are before you for your consideration.
And I know that we'll be pulling items 4 and 14 for separate consideration. Is there anything else that should come off of consent? Seeing none, I'll take a motion from Ms. Yang to approve the balance of the consent agenda items. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
6 in favor, no one opposed. The consent agenda is adopted as amended. Item 4 is Resolution 25-1341, authorizing the Department of Public Works organized trash and recycling operations to expend an amount not to exceed $5,000 for the purpose of providing candy for various public events and parades throughout 2025.
And there is a version 2 in Legistar that I would move for our approval. I want to thank one of my constituents for his vigilance and paying attention to this item and pointing out, first of all, to make sure that this is not being approved retroactively, that these dollars haven't already been spent. We really don't like to approve expenses after they've already occurred. So I was able to speak to Director Sean Kershaw and be assured that these expenses have not yet been incurred. Also that the amount can come down from $5,000 to $2,500. And there was a slight error in the last part of the resolution that gave Parks and Rec the authority to spend the money, not Public Works, which we love Parks and Rec, but we would not want them to get the money that Public Works wants. So I'm going to move version 2 that has corrected all of those items. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted as amended. Item 14 is Resolution 25-1365, approving the appointment of Melanie McMahon as Interim Director of the Department of Planning and Economic Development.
So this is an exciting day for us. We had a little bit of conversation about this at our Housing and Redevelopment Authority meeting. I purposely saved my comments for this meeting instead of making them at that time. But I will take a motion from HRA Chair Johnson for this item. Is there any discussion of the motion from my colleagues? Maybe any comments that we didn't make earlier, or we can repeat the comments we made earlier. Ms. Jost.
Thank you, Council President Naker. I will just repeat what I said earlier today, since to all the viewers from the HRA that did or did not see it. I am just really excited to see Melanie McMahon step into this role, especially in her overall time here in the city of St. Paul, starting in the Ward 3 office and then working in the mayor's office, and especially your partnership on the Highland Bridge project. I think that you are really well prepared for this role, and I also think, Councilmember Yang spoke earlier about our legislative aides and just seeing what role they have in our city, and then also them really taking on more, and just their commitment to our city, I think is just really important to lift up. So thank you, Director McMahon. Really excited to have you in this role.
Thanks, Ms. Jost. Other discussion of the motion? Well, Ms. McMahon, I'm also thrilled to see you stepping into this role. I think we've known each other since Planning Commission days, which has been a while, and you just have everything it takes to step into what I consider to be one of the most important roles in the city. Economic development in particular is something that we so need to double down on, and you have the tenacity, the email responsiveness, the commitment, and the vision, and the ability to motivate a team and make people feel good about their work. That's so important for not just this role, but any role. So really excited to get to continue working with you in this new capacity. And with that, why don't we take a vote and then swear you in? So all in favor of the motion from Chair Johnson, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Melanie McMahon,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
to support the constitutions
to support the constitutions
of the United States
of the United States
and of the state of Minnesota,
and of the state of Minnesota,
and to discharge faithfully
and to discharge faithfully
the duties devolving upon me
the duties devolving upon me
as the Planning and Economic Development Interim Director
as the Planning and Economic Development Interim Director
of the City of St. Paul
of the City of St. Paul
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
Congratulations.
Welcome, Ms. McMahon. I was like, I can read it if we need to. I thought Ms. McMahon might say a few words, but I think she'll be saying enough words to us over the course of the next few years. So. She's probably got that covered. Sorry for the bad coordination.
Item 15 is Resolution 25-1404, recognizing the City of St. Paul's participation in Welcoming Week 2025.
And I'm really pleased to welcome Edmundo Lijo from the City Attorney's Office and Brianna Broberg from Welcoming America. I could not imagine a more important time in our country to be affirming our commitment to being a welcoming country. So grateful that you're here, grateful we can take time to hear more about this.
Thank you, Council President and Council members. Very excited that you will be considering this resolution. We have participated in Welcoming Week for at least the last 6 or 7 years. It's a series of events across the United States, and I'm really excited to have Brianna Broberg, the Midwest Regional Manager for Welcoming America, to kind of come in and tell us a little bit about what Welcoming America does and what Welcoming Week is. Also, we have been a member of Welcoming America for several years. In fact, we were the beneficiary of a grant through the Great Ways for Growth initiative, which is a joint venture of Welcoming America and the American Immigration Council, which allowed us to do the Belonging in the Twin Cities Immigrant Inclusion Report that was published in 2022, which has been very beneficial to everything we do with regard to our immigrant refugee communities here in St. Paul. So with that, I'd like to introduce Brianna Broberg.
Great. Welcome up.
Thank you all so much for having me here today. I won't take much time, but I'll just share a little bit about Welcoming America and a little bit more about Welcoming Week. Welcoming America is a national, nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. We lead a movement of inclusive communities becoming more prosperous by ensuring that everyone belongs and has the opportunity to thrive. And we believe that all residents, including immigrants, are valued contributors and are vital to our success and our shared futures. Welcoming America convenes a network of members, which are local governments, including the City of St. Paul, and local nonprofit organizations across the country. One of the things that we do is to host the annual Welcoming Week celebration. It's a celebration that brings together neighbors of all backgrounds and can be celebrated in a number of different ways. Can be community events, can be positive messaging, can be just opportunities to engage with your neighbors. Really, it's an opportunity to unite around our shared values about welcoming and ensuring that all residents of a community feel like they belong and have the opportunities to fully engage in civic, social, and economic life. Our theme this year is the stories that we share, and so it's an opportunity for folks to celebrate differences between people and also to find points of commonality by sharing their stories with one another. And so we're really excited that the City of St. Paul has done so much wonderful welcoming work all year round, and Welcoming Week is just a great opportunity to really celebrate, uplift, and affirm the importance of welcoming in this community and across the country. Really, there hasn't been probably a more important time to be able to uplift and affirm those values. So we're really excited about Welcoming Week, which starts this September 12th and goes through the 21st. And thank you again for having us here today. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you so much for letting us know a little bit more about the important work that your organization is doing. We're really grateful to be part of that. I'm going to take a motion from Vice President Kim to approve the resolution, and I'm looking to my colleagues to see if there is any discussion of that motion. Ms. Yang, and then Ms. Bowie.
Thanks, Council President. Well, I want to say thank you to you and also Edmundo for bringing forward the resolution here. It would be remiss of me if I didn't uplift how important the work Edmundo is doing. The work that you're doing here is so critical to us being able to live even like our values around being a welcoming city. And so I want to say thank you. And I did share about the immigration resources that you shared out to us, like even just this entire year, it's the post that has had the furthest reach on social media for my council page. And so I can't say enough like how important those resources are and the work that you're doing to our city here. So keep up the amazing work and look forward to passing this resolution every single year.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Yang. Ms. Bowie.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to say ditto to what Councilmember Yang had mentioned. Also, Edmundo, you have just been phenomenal, a resource to the community. Thank you so much for always taking up the invitation to talk with community and share this wonderful event. I think Welcoming Week uplifts our values, and we want to make sure that St. Paul is a place for everyone, and this truly shows that value. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Vice President Kim.
Yeah, we'll drop a ditto as everyone does, but so appreciative because it's creating visibility of our values, but also we're taking action. We have a fund for folks to use. We help with legal resources. Council offices are extensions of those resources, and so I just always so appreciate your work. It's this kind of quiet, steady force that we offer in the city of St. Paul that I think we could do a little bit more of. And so when folks, municipalities are asking what can they do, we can say pass a Welcome Week resolution, offer some resources, have lawyers available, count on council members to share out that message. But now more than ever, I think that sort of unified approach is going to be more important than ever. Just grateful for the kind of the wear and tear that it might take to be in this work. Like, we are from these communities that we're talking about, and so it's not just about this council resolution that's at the table, it's actually extraordinarily personal. So I just really, really appreciate, I know that dedication comes from a very personal space for myself and some of my colleagues here on the council, so deep gratitude. And thank you so much for joining us here at council and sharing the good work of Welcome Week. Having a national approach, I think, is just incredible, and having a presence that is reaching into municipal governments, I think, is just tremendous. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Vice President. Any other discussion of the motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted.
Thank you again.
Very much.
Thank you.
Item 16 is Resolution 25-1357, reciting a proposal for a housing program for a multifamily rental housing development, approving the project and the program pursuant to Minnesota Statutes Chapter 462C, authorizing the HRA to issue conduit multifamily housing revenue obligations, and authorizing the preparation of necessary documents and materials in connection with said project and program, Joseph's Point at Upper Landing Project, 200 Wilkins Street.
And this item is finally ready for our adoption because, as we discussed at HRA, the environmental review is complete. This is an opportunity to extend the affordability of some critically needed family housing in Ward 2, which I'm personally very excited about and I know aligns with our priorities as a council. So I would move approval. Is there any discussion of this motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item 17 is Resolution 25-1358, approving issuance of a $241,157.97 ERA-2 loan and execution of the loan agreements and related documents for the Joseph's Point at Upper Landing Project, 200 Wilkins Street.
Take a motion from Ms. Bowie for approval. Any discussion of the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item 18 is Resolution 25-1359, authorizing use of a project labor agreement for the rehabilitation of the Joseph's Point at Upper Landing Project, 200 Wilkins Street.
I'll take a motion from Ms. Coleman for approval. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item 19 is final adoption of Ordinance 25-48, amending Chapter 130 of the Legislative Code, procedure for vacating streets and other public grounds.
So to those who are just joining us for the first time today or who don't remember in detail all of our council procedures from previous times, any of our ordinances get 3 readings. So this is the final adoption, the third reading of this ordinance. Previously, we had a first reading and a staff report. We had a second reading and a public hearing, and now this is the third time, and so it's before us for final adoption. You will see some items coming up for first reading and for public hearings, and so that's what those are. So this is before us for final adoption. I'll take a motion from Ms. Jost for approval. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The ordinance is adopted. Item 20 is first reading of ordinance 25-49, establishing the classified title City Council Communications Lead in the unclassified service pursuant to Section 12.03.2H of the City Charter.
And this is a first reading, and we didn't talk about this beforehand, but Mr. Wilms, do you want to give us any information about the City Council Communications Lead that is being proposed by ordinance here?
Thank you, Council President and council members. So this item establishes a job classification within the civil service rules in the unclassified service. And so it's an appointed position, and it converts a vacant policy analyst position to help shore up our approach towards citywide public engagement, outreach, and communications on behalf of the council members and the institution of the council.
Thanks, Mr. Wilms. And I know that a priority of everyone on this council is greater authentic community engagement, more transparency, and more communication. So this position will help us do that. And grateful, Mr. Wilms, for your work to do that. Any questions for Mr. Wilms? This is just first reading. All right.
And this ordinance is laid over to September 17th for second reading public hearing. Item 21 is first reading of ordinance 25-53, amending chapter 441 of the legislative code to adjust electric vehicle charging station rates.
And I believe we have a staff report on this item from Mr. Russ Stark. Welcome up.
Thank you, Council President, council members. Okay, we've got some slides to share with you, and we're working on how to do that. Okay. I will get started with the narrative. The council first set charging rates for our EV spot network back in 2021 via ordinance 21-34. The rates are designed to cover the cost of electricity that the city bears when people use our chargers, as well as the operations and maintenance of the equipment. Those costs have gone up over time. You all know that electricity rates have gone up, for example. And so this would be our first change to the rates for the EV spot network. If I'm able to pull up the slides, I will show you the proposal in detail of what that change is proposed to be. But adjusting the rates will ensure the reliability of service, accessibility of the service, and the financial sustainability of the EV spot network. A little piece of good news to share is that, consistent with the change in state law around copper wire theft and needing a license to sell scrap copper, cable cuts at our chargers are way down. In fact, we haven't had any in the last couple of months, and that's been a really big improvement. That said, maintenance costs overall are still up. And so, if we're not able to pull up the slides, I will just read this description to you. It's also in the record.
You could put them on the voice-activated projector as a backup if they were big enough.
Oh, okay. That might work.
As long as it's activated by voice.
Can I please activate this projector? Is that how I activate it?
Yeah, that was good. Ineffective, but good. Why don't you proceed while the voice activation takes effect?
So there are a few, there's basically a daytime rate, a nighttime rate for level 2 chargers, and a daytime rate and a nighttime rate for our fast chargers, of which there are fewer, as well as a connection fee at each. The proposal is to increase those rates from 25 cents and 23 cents for level 2 charging to 30 cents and 27 cents and for DC fast charging from 35 and 33 cents to 43 and 40 cents per kilowatt hour. DC fast charging is more expensive because when you pull that much power that quickly, Xcel charges us quite a bit more for the speed of using that much power. So as a percentage change, this is not insubstantial, but it is the only change that we've made since the original adoption back in 2021. So we're having to do a little bit of catch up in order to make sure that we're covering the cost of this system. And
Now you can
we are-
start all over. Just kidding.
Sorry. No problem. I don't need to go back through most of this, but just to pull up the slide that shows the proposed rate change here. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Thanks so much, Mr. Stark. Sorry for the technological difficulties. I see a question from Ms. Yang.
Thanks, Council President. I was just curious about a couple of things. Would you be able to explain what is used to determine the rate changes? Like, is there a formula behind all of that? And then also, you mentioned this is the first time we've made an amendment since 2021. It seems like it would make sense for us to always reevaluate this every single year, given the cost of inflation. That would be something I'm really supportive of. I was wondering if you would be able to speak to how often like this will come to the council for amendments.
Councilmember Yang, Council President, thank you for the question. Yes, so there's a little bit of art and a little bit of science in the setting of these rates because we collect a certain amount of revenue based on how much usage the chargers are getting. And there was a hope that over time as the usage increased, just from the additional usage and the connection fee, we would get closer and closer to sort of a break-even point over time. We were seeing some of that start to happen, but then the rates went up right beneath our feet. And so just to adjust for all of those factors combined, it's a little bit art, a little bit science. I won't get into the nuts and bolts of the actual tariff or rate that Xcel charges us, but it's not simple. There are demand charges that are higher during the day, for example, and during peak times. And so this is an attempt to adjust. State law allows us to collect fees such as these rates in order to cover our costs, essentially. And so we're trying to, as accurately as possible, cover our costs. And with the current rates, we're no longer doing that.
Vice President Kim. Oh, I'm so sorry, Ms. Yang.
Just the second question was like how often this will come to the council? Like, is it once a year? Are you thinking, just projecting into the future?
Yeah, so now, thank you for the question, Councilmember Yang, Council President. Now that we are at more of sort of a steady state of operations of the system, I would suspect that it would be appropriate for us to come back more than every 4 years. I will also note that the rates that we're being charged, we think are too high. And one of the reasons that we think they're too high is that for the public chargers that this is a public service that we are providing. This is not a money-making service, but we're being charged a rate that's called a commercial rate. The same rate that a privately owned provider of public charging would be charged for public EV charging. And so we're in the process of starting to make the case to the Public Utilities Commission to get a lower rate. If that were to happen, and if that were to be a substantial reduction, it's actually possible we would come back to you with a recommendation to lower the rate even in order to better align with, costs, expenses with revenues. So a little hard to say exactly when we'll be back, certainly not any sooner than a year from now, but a year from now would probably make sense.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. Vice President Kim.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, this is very apparent. And like yesterday when I said I promise I'm listening, but I probably have an uninformed question. So this makes sense, but then how is this passed on to the user? So like I see the rates, they make sense, right? Like if we charge faster, it costs more, but then for the user, is it then are they being charged this tiny little bit extra, but when we're recharging the vehicle, or is this charge passed on to the user at all, and if so, how?
Council Vice President Kim, Council President. So we have two different user types. We have the car share program, and our car pays the city monthly for the total usage by the car share program of the chargers, and then we have the individual charging their car at a public charger, and it's the individual who will sort of notice more directly that change. And yes, essentially they're just charged a little bit more in per kilowatt hour, and so they'll probably notice a 10 or 15% increase in what they've paid for a charge, essentially.
By kilowatt hour. By kilowatt hour.
By kilowatt hour plus the connection fee. So it's sort of a
Okay.
combination of a connection fee and then a per kilowatt hour fee. Again, the sum total is aimed at trying to hit the amount of our expenses. There's a little bit of art there.
So there's like a little recuperation, but also a little bit, yeah, just a recuperating of costs essentially is the tiniest amount that we're trying to.
That's correct. So we're not way off in terms of revenue that we're collecting, but we are starting to run in the red, and we want to make sure that we keep the account in the black and even.
Thanks, Vice President. And in the hopes that if I have a very basic question, others might have the same question, but it's possible they won't. Is a kilowatt hour the same as an hour?
So a kilowatt hour is, trying to think of the best way to describe this. A kilowatt hour is a unit of energy, and it is the amount of energy that would be delivered. I'm not even sure I'm going to answer the question correctly, so I'm going to get back to you on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Thank you so much, Mr. Stark.
Thank you.
We'll see this again next week.
Appreciate
Yes, the ordinance is laid over to September 17th for second reading and public hearing. Item 22 is a public hearing of ordinance 25-50, amending chapters 45 of the Administrative Code to define reporting requirements and require that the city's legislative agenda be submitted to City Council no later than the first Wednesday in December prior to the commencement of the regular state legislative session.
So we are at public hearings now, and just for everyone who's here to testify on a public hearing today, the way this will work is when your item is called and when we begin the public hearing, sometimes we'll have a little bit of conversation before that, but when we say, is there anyone here to testify on this item, you'll come to the front, stand between the two microphones. You don't need to adjust them. They will pick you up just fine. You'll have 2 minutes to say your name, where you're coming from, and provide your testimony. And we ask that you sign in at either of the two sign-in sheets after you're done. My job is to keep us to 2 minutes per person, which is not a fun job, and it does go by quickly. But please know that there are other ways to give us testimony, including email and voicemails before the council meeting, so this is not the only way to give testimony. This item, before we do the public hearing, there are 2 amendments that are being brought forward that we're going to vote on first. One is from Ms. Bowie, and I'll let her speak to that amendment.
Thank you. Yes, and thank you, Council President. In brief, the item is just adding a requirement from the Intergovernment Relations, our wonderful staff that's here with us today, to give a report back, just an update essentially at the conclusion of the session. So it just puts that requirement in there so they can come on back and share that update with us before they I believe in December when they're going to give the presentation of the upcoming legislative agenda.
Great. And that's in Legistar as
It's an attachment.
As an attachment. Okay. Great. So we'll take a vote on that amendment, and then we'll take a vote on the next amendment, and then we'll go to the public hearing. So let's take that as a motion for that amendment. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The amendment is approved.
And I am proposing an amendment that just clarifies that we need to have the legislative agenda presented to us no later than the second Wednesday of December, which means that it needs to be submitted to us no later than the first Thursday of December, as is always our practice to get materials the week before. There was some confusion about that in the text, and we wanted to make it very, very clear. So that is what mine is trying to do. So I would move approval of that amendment. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The amendment is approved.
And now, that brings us to our public hearing. So is there anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll take a motion from Ms. Bowie to close the public hearing and lay the matter over till September 10th for final adoption. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed, and the ordinance is laid over to September 17th for final adoption.
And it's not the 10th.
Yes, it's in there. I was working, so I wasn't able to respond, but it's in there. I put it in there personally myself.
Yeah, it's more that I can't open it.
Okay.
So the
I'll,
attachment
as soon as we get to the next item, I'll check on it.
There's another amendment on that item, is there?
Item 23 is Resolution Public Hearing 25-106, ratifying the assessment for Minnesota Street from 6th Street to 11th Street paving and lighting project constructed as part of the 2024 St. Paul Street paving program.
And before we have the public hearing on this item, we actually have a quick staff report from Barb Mundahl in our Department of Public Works, I believe. And this is good news. It's an assessment that is coming down from what we thought it would be. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President, council members. My name is Barb Mundell. I'm with the, this is kind of freaky, with the St. Paul Public Works Street Construction. And the good news is that the project, due to a very competent contractor and competitive bidding, and we did not need to use all of the contingency money. The assessments have gone down pretty substantially. And I was honestly just here to answer any questions about the construction, but if there are any, I'm here.
Thank you very much for being here. And if there are folks here individually to ask questions about their own assessment, Ms. Mundahl can help assist with that since the assessment is coming down. I will say to you and your team, Minnesota Street looks awesome. It'll look even more awesome when it's completely cleaned up.
Yes.
But in the meantime, the work is really remarkable, and I think it's going to make a big difference for downtown, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Mundahl before we hold the public hearing? Doesn't look like it. Okay, thank you so much. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item, item 23? All right, seeing none, I'll take a motion from Chair Johnson to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 24 is Resolution Public Hearing 25-196, approving major modifications to the Victoria Park Master Plan.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll take a motion from Ms. Jost to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 25 is Resolution Public Hearing 25-197, amending the financing and spending plans in the fire department in the amount of $191,723.66 for the contribution received from the Minnesota Board of Firefighter Training and Education to pay for training for firefighters.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll take a motion from Ms. Coleman to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 26 is Resolution Public Hearing 25-195, amending the financing and spending plans in the fire department in the amount of $100 for the donation from the Brandenburg family in honor of retired fire captain Patrick Donnelly.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll take a motion from Ms. Yang to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 27 is Resolution Public Hearing 25-198, amending the financing and spending plans in the fire department in the amount of $29,703.51 from the Minnesota Task Force 1 reimbursement from the city of Edina.
And as former Council President Brenmoen liked to say, it's always a good day when we're taking money from the city of Edina. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? Seeing none, I'll take a motion from Vice President Kim to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 28 is Resolution Public Hearing 25-189, approving the application of Minnesota Taco and Tequila Festival for the Viva La Vida Taco and Tequila Festival event on Saturday, September 20th and Sunday the 21st for a sound level variance in order to present live amplified sound at 425 Rice Street, former Sears parking lot.
I have a feeling there's going to be some good news coming from Ward 1 before that weekend. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll take a motion from Ms. Bowie to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 29 is Resolution Public Hearing 25-190, approving the application of Anderson Race Management, Jennifer Williams Walk for Water event, Saturday, September 20th, for a sound level variance in order to present live amplified sound at Upper Landing Park, 226 Spring Street.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll take a motion from Ms. Jost to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 30 is Resolution Public Hearing 25-194, approving the application of the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, Inc., the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, Inc.'s Light the Night event, Saturday, September 27th, for a sound level variance in order to present live amplified sound at Harriet Island, 200 Dr. Justice O'Hage Boulevard.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll take a motion from Chair Johnson to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 31 is RLHTA 25-115, ratifying the appealed special tax assessment for property at 686 Edmond Avenue.
And this brings us to our legislative hearing agenda items. Welcome up, Ms. Mormont.
Thank you, Council President. My recommendation on number 31 is to lay the matter over to October 22nd in order that we can get fresh information from the new DSI poly system. We don't have any current information right now.
Thanks, Ms. Mormont. And this is all it's part of responding to the cyber incident that occurred a couple months ago. Okay. Take a motion from Ms. Bowie to follow the legislative hearing officer's recommendation. Any discussion of that motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is laid over to October 22nd. Item 32 is RLHTA 25-344, amending council file RLHAR 24-25 to reduce the assessment collection of vacant building registration fees billed during April 5th to October 20th, 2023 at 1350 Hague Avenue.
This is an item that we have seen a couple of times before. I would look to Vice President Kim for a motion.
Yeah, I make a motion to approve the recommendation of the legislative hearing officer.
The motion is to approve the recommendation of the legislative hearing officer. Any discussion of the motion? Ms. Yang.
Okay, thanks, Council President. The recommendation is for the reduction, right, to 2,537. Okay, I just want to share my comments on this. This is something I've been putting a lot of time and effort into reviewing, and while I do believe that the recommendation is very generous, there's a couple of things that come to mind for me that I have been deliberating about, and it has been a part of my decision making. The first is, how long has this building been a part of the vacant building registration, and did they complete their work in time to be able to get a reduction? And then the second one is there evidence of any sort of justification for a reduction? And for me, when I do review the materials, which I do want to reference, the one I'm looking at is the timeline of events regarding the vacant building fee assessment review, city actions, and also like the owner testimony. What is clearly shown to me is that this building, it entered the vacant building program in April 2019. Also that let me see here. It was billed for the vacant building fee from October 2023 to October 2024, and it did not get out of the vacant building program until March 2024. So to me, it clearly is showing that the work hasn't been done. It's been a part of it for a full year, and so it makes sense for for the owners to get assessed the full fee. I didn't see any sort of evidence showing that there should be a reduction. And while I do understand that there was a lot of miscommunication and it seems like maybe our systems were not talking to each other, I think that, you know, there's been many cases where we have seen situations like that where it also didn't justify there being any sort of reduction. And so I will not be supporting any sort of reduction for this. I would like to, I would be supportive of assessing the full amount instead. And so if that is the motion, I will not be in support of it.
Thanks, Ms. Yang. Appreciate your thoughtfulness about this issue. Is there any further discussion of the motion? Ms. Bowie?
Thank you, Council President. I just have a question for the hearing officer, Marcia. Can you share your reasoning behind the reduction?
This tax assessment, as the council has been briefed on before, is one that was already ratified and certified and appears on the 2025 property tax statement. The normal considerations for a tax assessment for vacant building fees would include the possibility of prorating them for the length of time the building has been in the vacant building program. It is very unusual to look at a property after the fact. I applied the same criteria to this property as I would have had it been handled in a timely fashion. And again, the notice issues, there was no fault with those as discussed.
Thanks, Ms. Mormon. Any further discussion of the motion? Ms. Johnson?
I apologize. And so, Ms. Mormon, just to get clarity, what was the amount that was assessed last year? Was there a reduction at that time?
The amount that was assessed last year and shows up on the property tax statement, I believe, is $5,075.
So no reduction?
It's for a whole year.
And so no reduction at that time? That was the full vacant building fee?
There was no reduction
okay.
prior to it being certified to the tax statement.
Okay, and so at this particular juncture, your recommendation is for a reduction for a reduced rates. Can you just verify? Would that mean that the owners would receive a refunded amount at this point?
Yes, they would. The only way to handle this circumstance after the fact would be for a refund to be issued.
Any further discussion of the motion? Ms. Bowie?
I do want to share that I do support the recommendation. I just want to make sure that we have on record from the last hearing, I had advised or instructed that if there was any evidence, if there was any records of DSI staff saying to ignore that. I remember that was something that the appellant had mentioned. Has there been anything entered into the record or brought to your knowledge of any proof of record of those conversations?
Originally, the statement that there were text messages to demonstrate there was communication between the DSI inspectors and the owners came up in the legislative hearing process. That's something that the owners proffered. At that juncture, I asked that they would please provide those text messages so that the council could have those text messages available for their deliberations. Those text messages did not come forward as a part of the process before I made my referral to City Council or during the council's deliberation process. They have not been forthcoming since the last time the council considered this matter.
Thank you. Okay. I'm seeing Ms. Yang and then Chair Johnson.
Thanks, Council President. I just want to say first off, like, these legislative hearing items are always very complicated and very unique as well. I don't think there's ever been a single item in front of us where it's been the same situation that the owner has been going through. And I just want to say first off that the reason why there were layovers was so that the owners could provide more testimony based off of requests that also was given by Councilmember Bowie too. But the fact that we have not received anything, like, first, that's really disappointing because that was the reason why we approved the layovers. And because we haven't had any, received anything, to me, it's just all the more reason why it's important for us to approve this assessment in the first place. This is a fee that, from my understanding, has already been paid for. And so if we were to make any sort of change, it would be a refund, which I don't think that there's any issue with that. But it goes back to what I said earlier. I don't have anything in front of me that provides evidence that there should be a reduction in the first place. And like I said to you all, this building has been in the vacant building program for an entire year already. If there were any sort of improvements to the status of the building where they were getting closer to getting it completed, I would absolutely be very supportive of a reduction, but there is nothing documented about that at all.
Thanks, Ms. Yang. Chair Johnson, and then Ms. Bowie.
Yeah, I'm really struggling to see the path for a reduction in this capacity, and so I'm curious, Ms. Moorman, was this your original recommendation, or was that a recommendation per conversations with the council member in the ward that it's in?
Council President Naker, Councilmember Johnson, I had no conversation with any council members prior to making this recommendation in the hearing process. Again, I referred to what in the past we've used for special assessments that have not yet been certified, the ones you would normally consider.
Okay.
And rightly or wrongly.
I think I'm also going to vote against this this motion as well, in part because there's been a lot of conversations around this, and I'm actually slightly, I think looking at the public record as well, I am not only concerned with the aspect of having to go back through an already assessed collection and essentially issuing a refund, going through a reduction when the building in fact was vacant. And so I think the question of who's responsible to pay the vacant building fee, some of the things that have been proposed during the public hearing as well, and the public comment from the appellant, I think a lot of those conversations would have to be with the owner whom owned it previously and not necessarily with the city. Because of your answer to the question from Councilmember Bowie about whether you had received any communications or even any sort of proof that there was evidence of communication to even lead to miscommunication, and that hadn't been actually submitted either, I think I would agree with Councilmember Yang on this one in that regard, and I'm not going to be supporting that motion at all.
Thanks, Ms. Johnson. We'll go to Ms. Bowie, and then I think if folks are ready, I'd like to take a vote on this motion. If it fails, we can always take another motion. Ms. Bowie.
I just want to be clear, the motion that's on the table right now is the Marcia's recommendation.
Yep, to reduce the fee by half.
Okay, thank you. I'll just share this. From reviewing this, this hearing item, this isn't a problem property. This isn't a vacant building program or item that's in the property that's in the vacant building program that has not actually been in compliance. This is actually a building that has a business that operates as a donut shop. They are done with all of their recommendations in terms of being up to code. This is a functional building. From my knowledge, it's not in the vacant building program. The thing that complicated this, which is why we needed more time, was because there was a change in ownership. And we have had precedents like this before where we have seen properties in vacant building program, they sell it, and then the new owner is surprised with the bill, and they come and appeal through this process. We have deleted assessments. In this situation, I've mentioned before, I actually thought that there was, if there was evidence of being told that they're no longer in the vacant building program and to ignore this letter, my advice would have been to delete the assessment. Since that evidence have not been brought forth, and also I do share your sentiments, Councilmember Yang, that it's kind of disappointing where it's like we took all this time. There isn't no evidence that that they've been told otherwise. But this business owner, they aren't in any issues or violating any compliances. And I think with Marcia's reduction is actually fair because there has been proof of at least miscommunication on their end. We have seen a presence before of miscommunication in other situations like this. So I would be asking for council to adopt and trust the recommendation particularly given from Marcia. I am voting in full confidence that, the DSI had did all of their due diligence in this matter. Even everything that's been submitted into the record have demonstrated that this process has been fair and just, and that's what really matters to me, and that's what's important. Now, how people want to vote, is up to them, but I will be voting strongly for this reduction from Marcia's.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Bowie. So the motion on the table is to approve the legislative hearing officer's recommendation for the reduction in half. We'll take a roll call vote.
Jost?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
Yang?
No.
Bowie?
Yes.
Coleman?
Yes.
Johnson?
No.
Council President Naker?
Aye.
5 in favor, 2 opposed, those being council members Yang and Johnson. The resolution is adopted as amended.
That brings us to the rest of our legislative hearing agenda. Ms. Mormond, are there things in front of us for separate consideration?
Council President, we do have people here to testify for a series of rent stabilization cases. Those are items 33 through 40. Beforehand, I believe that the clerk will read the first one into the record, and then we'll proceed with the staff report and testimony, and I'll walk through it.
Actually, items 33 through 40 are all appeals of Jim Poradak and Abby Anson, attorneys for Housing Justice Center, representing tenants to rent stabilization determinations at 9034 Ashland Avenue, Units 1 and 2, 938 Ashland Avenue, Unit 6, and 942 Ashland Avenue, Units 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12.
Ms. Mormont.
Council President, the testimony in this particular case will be arranged differently than it normally is, so I'll go over that quickly. The council has determined that it should hear, given that there's similarities across the cases, 5 minutes to begin with from the appellant to speak to overarching issues throughout the appeals, and 5 minutes for other interested parties to address the council on the same type of overarching issues. Following that, there would be a staff report as necessary for each item, and again, 2 minutes worth of testimony if it's distinct and different from the testimony already received for each of the individual appeals listed in your agenda. Before we begin, I would point out that the number 35, the case has been withdrawn, and so the council would not be hearing testimony on that item today. And my recommendation is amended on item number 38, as the tenant has moved out and therefore I believe no longer has standing to appeal the matter before the council. To summarize the staff recommendation you received from me, what this is an appeal of a decision made by Department of Safety and Inspection staff. They receive applications for rent stabilization exemptions. So if you want to go above 3%, you have to file that application to go above the 3% with the department. In this case, the applicant wanted to go sufficiently above 3%, so 8% or more, that a complete staff review was conducted of the application. The reasons provided in the application for asking for that exception were an increase in real property taxes, unavoidable increase in operating expenses, capital improvement project, and an increase in the number of tenants occupying a unit. So those all come together, and the numbers have to be demonstrated that they have actually increased. The MNOI, or Maintenance of Net Operating Income, worksheet is attached to your record. That would be where it's referenced, and it also provides you with the consumer price index changes between 2019, the base year, and 2024, although I don't think that they filled it out to their benefit all the way. I think they used 2023. In any event, The ordinance itself is constructed that, yes, exemptions to the 3% cap can be granted. And there's a laundry list of items that you have in the ordinance that would be reasons for granting an exemption, 4 of which I just listed for you. Other items would be reasons why you wouldn't consider that, and that would be a part of an analysis. What the appellant has argued is that none of those arguments should be considered because right away the property does not meet the warranty of habitability, the implied warranty of habitability. That is the very last item mentioned in the ordinance. So if you don't do that, we can't consider all of these things, would be the nature of it. And so the argument presented is all around the warranty of habitability. The other things that were considered, the operating income, the taxes, and so on, those, there was no discussion that those were inaccurate numbers or interpreted incorrectly by staff and so on. So those are sound and not what was under consideration in the appeal. I would note for the record that the appellant, the attorney for the appellants has indicated they would like to be appealing on behalf of the entire building and having the results of these appeals apply throughout. I would put to the council again that the council has specific appeals in front of it with appellants who have certificates of representation from the Housing Justice Center. There is no way for the city council to collect all of these individual decisions and say they apply throughout. You just have these particular appeals in front of you. Perhaps another jurisdiction could make that decision, but it is not what's in front of you today. These individual appeals are in front of you today. With respect to the building's conditions, so the department gets the application, and the very first thing that it's going to look at is the building's conditions. Is it okay? Does it meet that warranty? When the staff looked at it, they looked at the fire certificate of occupancy ratings on the building, which is the standard measure that the city uses to determine the condition of a non-owner occupied building. There's 3 buildings in front of you. One had an A rating, one had a B rating, one had a C rating. No subsequent inspections were triggered because no complaints were filed with the Department of Safety and Inspections indicating that there were problems. So taking those ratings at their face value is all that staff could have done. In the legislative hearing process itself, on July 17th, when reviewing the conditions, and I won't say code violations because I think it was a mix of conditions and violations, perhaps not. I asked specifically if these had been forwarded to the Department of Safety and Inspections for investigation, as they had been submitted to my office at the beginning of June. They had not. I asked, would you like them to be? The answer is yes. Terrific. They all got sent to the Department of Safety and Inspections the 3rd week in July. Well, we know what happened the 4th week in July. And the department got out there on September 4th and did an inspection of the entire premise. My understanding from the inspector is but for one unit whose locks had changed because of a legal matter, and that's okay. The inspector found in his inspection that the conditions did not rise to the level of requiring any unit to be vacated. The main problem, and you would see the word condemned in the notes attached to your record from the inspector, is that a staircase on the outside had been condemned. That staircase was not a mandatory exit route, but it is definitely on the premise. Because of that, I found it hard to say that that in and of itself takes away the habitability of the unit if there's still a good way to get out. The fire certificate of occupancy inspectors also look quite particularly not just at the fire code, but at the property maintenance code, at relevant housing codes, at sections of the building, mechanical, and so on codes. And if it's necessary to bring in trades inspectors to deal with that, they do that in their process. So there's the objective measures of the codes being used by a credentialed fire inspector, in this case, a certified building official and a certified fire inspector. Finally, information presented in the legislative hearing by the presented expert, Mr. Trossel, when asked specifically if these habitability, or the warranty of habitability issues constituted reason for the units to be vacated, a unit or units to be vacated, he indicated that they would be, were they to go unaddressed. And I think that's a really important idea here. Like, will they be addressed? Have they been addressed? Was the owner noticed that these should be addressed? There's no information indicating not only that the fire certificate of occupancy complaints had come in, but also that the court system had made no finding that there were violations of this nature through something like a rent escrow action or a tenant remedy action and so on. So there's no other venue where those findings were corroborated, if you will. Taking those things together and the fire inspector's report, the fire inspector did find that a lot of things had been addressed that were originally brought up. We have the June 4th inspection by the expert witness. We have the September 4th inspection. So 3 months had passed in between that time and when the inspector made it through. Additionally, the landlord in testimony indicated that he had not been made aware of a significant number of these violations. I don't have records one way or the other on that. One example that was given that appears in the recommendation letter is that had he been aware of a lock problem that was reported on one of the units, he would have had that addressed because the day before he had had a locksmith on the property to do another repair. I struggle with this because these rent increases are not insignificant. We are looking at 28% and also at 52%. So this isn't small for people to be able to deal with. And when looking at the code, there is no line in the code that says, except if you can't afford it. You know, there's a presumption that the cap is there to maintain affordability. Absolutely, that's why the city would have that policy. But within the reasons for an exception to be or not granted, either way, it doesn't speak to tenants' income or ability to afford a rent increase. And so I have not been able to take that into account. I have no information on income. I have not prepared any information on the affordability according to, for example, regional median income. These do look to me, if I were to analyze them, to be in the 40 to 50% regional median income level, but I would want to confirm that. Finally, I would ask that the City Council consider, just based on what you've been able to review on your own, whether you would want to lay the matter over for a week. You did receive a submission late this morning, midday, which I imagine some of you have reviewed, maybe all of you have reviewed at this point, but just for your awareness that that is new. If the council does choose to lay the matter over, I would encourage the council to close the public hearing and the record today. There have been a lot of continuing submissions, and I think with the 28 attachments to the council's record that you have sufficient information at this point from any variety of perspectives to make your decision.
Thank you, Ms. Mormon. So we will move in a moment to 5 minutes for the appellant, 5 minutes for the other interested parties, and then move into each individual case one at a time. But before that, are there any questions from my colleagues just at the outset for Ms. Mormon? We can always ask additional questions of Ms. Mormon after we hear testimony. Not seeing any. Okay, don't go too far away. So this is a public hearing. We'll first give 5 minutes to the appellant, which includes Housing Justice Center and tenants, anyone who wants to be part of that 5 minutes. And again, we'll have 2 minutes for each testifier to give non-redundant testimony for each item. Welcome up.
And I'm just going to wait till those are passed around, if that's okay.
Thank you.
If I start talking, will my time start talking or start going?
Yes.
It will? Okay.
Yep.
Council President, council members, thank you for having us. My name's Abby Hansen. I'm here with my colleague Emily Curran. We're from Housing Justice Center. We represent the appellants, the residents in this appeal. We also have some of the residents here today. You'll meet them in just a few minutes, but I'll give some comments about the appeal before they get going. As noted, the rent increase here is 28%. 28%, clearly a significant increase in and of itself. But what stands out about this case and why the residents chose to appeal in this case is that such a significant increase was approved in a property that has serious habitability problems. And these problems are well documented in the record. And I'd like to touch quickly on this additional submission that was provided today that the hearing officer referenced. Again, I don't know if you've had a chance to look it over, but it was submitted by the Landlord's Council, and states that residents and their council have misrepresented the current state of the property. I want to be clear that we have not. In the objection document that we submitted on Monday, we have pictures of the property on pages 3 through 5. On page 5, there's a picture of a giant hole in the floor. That's in Ms. Simonson's unit. I texted her this morning. That is still there. On page 4, those are pictures from in and around Mr. Cornell's unit. The pictures that I just passed around, those are pictures Mr. Cornell took on Monday, and they're time-stamped. That still shows the water-damaged wall in the kitchen, and the cracks that lead to the water infiltration and the mold that we complained about are present. I'll also note, in his declaration, there are text messages that we screen-grabbed alerting the landlord of this problem in October 2024. The broken window on page 4, that is from Ms. Buell's unit. The fire inspection report that occurred last Thursday identified that as broken just last Thursday. Council's letter that was submitted today simply says the window has been ordered. I visited Ms. Scorey's apartment on Sunday. The windowsills and door frame look exactly as they did when I first visited the property in May. So that is what the property looks like. And besides the statement in the submission, the landlord's submission from earlier today, which simply says that these problems are fixed or will be fixed, there has been no documentation submitted that these problems actually have been fixed. Instead, what is in the record are the pictures, the videos, the declarations that the residents have submitted about these problems. And I'll also say that the problems at the property were confirmed by last week's fire certificate of safety and inspection. Last Thursday's inspection order, which we included as an exhibit to our objection, listed issues. And those code violations are things that need to be corrected, and those are things that are not minor. There's flaking paint listed on that code violation. This is a pre-1978 building, so under law, the paint in that property is presumed to contain lead unless a landlord has said otherwise. We have not received any documentation that would say that. So this flaking paint is presumed to contain lead. There are children that live in this property, and there are children that visit this property. There's foundation cracks. Those are things that we have raised from the get-go. And those are things that are still present per Mr. Cornell's photos, and those are things that lead to things like mold and water infiltration that are real problems for these tenants. And so these problems have been documented in a number of ways, and they are still present. And I just want to tell you that I've been working with these residents, and this has been frustrating for the residents. These are residents who, if this is approved, they are going to be paying $3,000 to $4,000 more per year in rent than they currently are for the same apartments that you are seeing in these photos. These are residents who have taken time and effort to identify these problems, document these problems, submit videos, submit over 100 photos, submit declarations in which they detail the problems, in which they detail when they told the landlord about these problems, detailed if the problems were there when they moved in, took time off work to attend legislative hearing, to attend today, They have put a lot of effort into this. They have put their necks out to raise these problems in the context of a rent stabilization appeal, and it seems as if these problems are just sort of being swept to the side. So it's been incredibly frustrating for them. And that's especially so because the law is written to include, consider habitability in multiple forms. There's the implied warranty of habitability that the hearing officer mentioned, but there is also substantial deterioration that must be considered, and there is substantial compliance with local health and housing code that must be considered. So habitability is throughout the ordinance, and habitability language has been in that ordinance since it was passed by St. Paul voters, and put into law. So today we are asking that you follow the ordinance as it is written and follow the non-controversial principle that if a landlord wants to deviate from that 3% cap, they need to hold up their end of the bargain and provide a habitable home.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Make sure to sign in. We'll now have 5 minutes for other interested parties, which means not the same side as the appellants. Welcome up.
Good afternoon, Council President, Council members. My name is Scott Day. I am the son of Judith Day, the owner of the building, and I'm also her attorney in fact. As we meet here today, my mom is over at the Cancer Institute getting blood tests. She is a very, very sick woman. I've been living abroad for the last 21 years. I was brought back to the Twin Cities in November by United Hospital because they wouldn't release her to anyone but a family member. My mom has owned these buildings since 1998. She has passed all city safety inspections. She was a former tenant of the building before she bought the building. We are here today to, she's followed the rules of the city of St. Paul for 28 years. She's acted more of a mother figure to her tenants than just a normal landlord. I'm here to let the council know that when the inspectors came through, I welcome the inspectors coming through. I am working daily with professionals to remedy all of the problems that the inspectors addressed. I'm happy to do that. We've never had an eviction out of our building. We are part of the community. I only approached the Rent Stabilization Board out of economic necessity. My mom has had early onset dementia. She the rents never kept up with the expenses. And I had to go through all the books and submit all the paperwork to rent stabilization, justifying why we need to increase the rent. We don't want to increase the rent. We have to increase the rent. My property taxes have raised, my insurance costs have raised, my energy prices have raised, all of our bills have raised, but the rents have not. And part of that reason was due to my mom's illness. My mom, she didn't ever want to raise rent on tenants. She was a motherly figure to these tenants. And this is not something we want to do. It's something we have to do. And we justified the economic numbers with rent stabilization. That's something that really wasn't discussed previously. It was an economics decision. We have no choice. If you look at the rent prices, they're well below the value in the city of St. Paul. And we're in a great neighborhood around the corner from the governor's mansion. This is just something we had to do, and we apologize for doing so, but we had to do it. Thank you.
Council President, members of the council, Bill Griffith representing Judith Day and Scott Day as her power of attorney. I want to make clear that when I sent my letter, I wanted to indicate to the council in real time, responding to a letter of September 8th, the status of the building. And I do believe the Appellants Council has misrepresented certainly what Mr. Day is doing to rectify, starting with the most significant concerns. That's where any landlord would start, right? You're dealing with your mom. She didn't raise the rent more than 1% in 5 years. Her expenses have gone up by 50%. So he triaged, when those complaints came in after this appeal, he triaged the most important: electrical, addressed. Mold abatement, addressed. The stat, I was out there today. I welcome any of you between now and your next meeting to walk out to the property. You can see where all of the stairs have been stabilized, the condemned stairs have been stabilized and corrected. So what you do as a landlord is you address the most pressing concerns. At the same time, they were also vandalized. And so those windows have been boarded up and new windows ordered. So no tenant is exposed to the elements at that building. I walked around it, I confirmed that myself, and I would encourage you to do the same. The important thing is what the hearing officer said. Your own professional staff have confirmed these points, that the building is in fact habitable. So that's not at issue. The improvements will continue over the next 30 days. All of those orders from DSI will be addressed. Take a look at those orders, take a close look. Chip paint, windows that don't operate, those will be repaired. There's nothing left on that list that causes serious habitability concerns, nor would I say that there ever was. But in any case, the most serious issues on the property have been addressed in the last 30 days. I think you've spent $70,000 to $80,000 on those improvements, and that's fine. That's what a landlord should do. We're not disputing that fact, but the property is habitable. Your own staff have confirmed that. Mr. Day will continue to work with DSI to make sure that anything of concern is addressed, and will continue to respond to tenants. He's done that. I will tell you the one tenant who had a 52% increase has reached a resolution with Mr. Day and will not have more than a 15% increase. Any one of the tenants who would like to work with us will do that.
Thank you very much.
But we have to have the increase to make the property work.
Thank you, sir. Make
Thank
sure
you.
to sign in. All right, we will now have, so why don't we read this item one more time for the record so we know which one we're talking about, and then we'll have 2 minutes for anyone who wishes to testify on something non-redundant on this item.
So item 33 is RLH RSA 25-8, appeal of Jim Poradek and Abby Hansen, attorneys for Housing Justice Center, representing tenant Jill Ackerman to a rent stabilization termination at 934 Ashland Avenue, Unit 1.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item?
And before we get to that, there was an invitation by the last speaker for council members to go visit the property. I would say it's the advice of the city attorney not to do any independent investigation. The record's what happens in the council chambers here today and what's been submitted as part of the record, not to do your own investigation.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the advice from our city attorney. Come on up. Don't be shy. Nope. Nobody's going to speak on this one? Okay. Okay. 2 minutes. Nobody to testify on this item. Okay. I'll take a motion from Ms. Bowie to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed.
Look to Ms. Bowie for a motion or starting off the discussion or
Yeah,
questions.
I do want to start with discussion. I also, too, just to save time, because ensure that we're not having redundancy, I do understand we're going to have to hear from each appellant for each item. But it seems like in this case, the tenant who made the appeal is not here, or are they here to testify? Okay.
Sure.
The
Come on
appellant
up.
is the Housing Justice.
Yeah,
That's right.
and-
Okay.
And there's no one who we called the public hearing and they didn't come, so I think
Okay.
we can assume.
I just want to make sure it's clear. So I'll just share this because I think it's based on the testimonies going forward. I'll have this disposition, but I just want to just also frame that overall the goals of the rent stabilization policy is to ensure that there's fairness and there's transparency when a landlord or an owner does feel the need to request or exception to increase rent. I know many of us, we all got behind, not only our strong tenant protections, but also rent stabilization to ensure that there is a transparent process for someone to request to deviate from the 3%. In this situation, this appeal process, I have observed and heard that there has been progress that's been made, particularly around making improvements on this property. One of the things that Marcia had mentioned, particularly that was in question, is this building habitable? Is this apartment habitable? And based off of our staff, based off the inspections, and also based off of any prior complaints, I would say that it is. I would make judgment that it is. Also, another thing too is, hearing from the owner and also Mr. Day around having that critical decision of, is this something that we want to do or have to do? And I think that's really the essence of what we're deciding on. He went through all the different proper channels to actually grant this exception. When we go through the eligibilities of the exception, it includes the increase in property taxes. It does include the increase of cost of management. All those things have been proven and submitted into the record. Now, I would say, looking at these pictures and at the living conditions of the tenants, I do think it is important that residents know that there are proper channels for them to explore if they have concerns about the living conditions. That is through DSI, and that is also a channel that we all promote and uplift for our advocates to to explore. But in this ruling, it's really important that we stay within the scope, and that is, is the city justified for granting this exception? And my ruling is that it did. I am open for discussion. I know it's a really tough and difficult decision, especially as a tenant, to receive a letter that your rent is going up and you have grievances around whether or not the living conditions match code. In this quasi-judicial manner, I'm not able to share what those proper routes are, but in this case, the question is, did we follow the law? And I would say that we did. Did Mr. Day and his mom, who owns this property, did they go through the proper channels to get this exception? And I believe that they did.
Thanks, Ms. Bowie. I have a question, and then I do have a comment. Ms. Mormon, I'm curious, you said that the DSI staff looked at the fire certificate of occupancy for the properties, and one was an A, B, and C. Do we know when those last inspections had taken place that they based their decision on as they looked at the fire
Yes.
C of O?
I do have that with me. More or less handy, if you can give me a moment. For 934 Ashland, which its address also reads 934, 936 Ashland, it received a B rating. The last inspection was on June 15th, 2023. No subsequent complaints have been called in. For 938 Ashland, the last inspection was November of 2021. It has a C rating. So it should have been re-inspected under the normal course of events. Due to short staffing, they haven't been doing re-inspections on these unless a complaint has been called in until they get a full complement of staff again. For 942 Ashland, it has an A rating. It was last inspected October 22nd of 2021. That would be, I believe, a 6-year time period between inspections if you have an A rating. In any event, no subsequent complaints came in on it. I did talk to the fire inspections manager about the ratings on these and the new inspection that occurred. And how the rating system works is when the findings in the inspection are loaded into what was Amanda, it will attach point values to each of the deficiencies. It will take the point values then and divide that by the number of units in common space in the building and give a rating. The council actually approves the point values that are attached to the different types of ratings. So he said, can't tell right now. When I read this, I think that they are between an A and a B, maybe one between a B and a C. But that he does not believe that the inspection results move the needle really on how the rating works given its application. So I hope that helps.
It does. Thank you. I'll just finish my comment and then I saw Chair Johnson. I'm not sure I'm ready to make a motion or anything to that end or speak specifically to the motion that, well, I'm not sure if you made a motion either, Ms. Booty, so we don't have a motion yet. But I guess I first just want to say thank you to our testifiers, and I'm very sorry about your mother. And I just also want to say that this is not personal. I think obviously everyone is here because this issue is very personal to them. But for those of us up here, our job is not to be casting judgment and saying you were bad, you were good. Our job is to interpret the law that we passed. And so I think it's important to say that at the outset, in part because I think our politics today doesn't honor that, and we're used to things being very personal, and at least at this body, we really try to keep it focused on what we should be focused on, which is the law. What I'm struggling with in this is that it seems like we are focusing on one of the requirements of our law, which is habitability and the warrant of habitability. But there is also the substantial deterioration of the rental unit other than as a result of normal wear and tear. And there's also failure on the part of the landlord to provide adequate housing services or to comply substantially with many laws, including local housing, health, and safety codes. And it seems like we are focusing only on habitability, and we continue to have this refrain that the renters never let us know. Or that it wasn't reported to DSI, or DSI didn't do anything more than look at the fire certificate of occupancy because there weren't complaints. But the burden of proof is not on the tenants in our ordinance. The burden of proof is on DSI to ascertain all of these different points. And I am concerned if the only metric that they're using is the fire certificate of occupancy, especially when that certificate of occupancy is more than 4 years old, especially when at least one of those units should have been re-inspected in the meantime because of its low rating and wasn't due to staff challenges. So I am having difficulty with the fact that the department made a determination to grant the rent increase prior to having done the level of due diligence that I think we need to do. And regardless of sort of what happened afterwards and what's been fixed since then and what's been inspected since then, I'm kind of coming back to the original determination and what had happened before that determination was made. So I will leave it there, but those are my swirling thoughts. Chair Johnson.
Honestly, that's exactly what I was going to pretty much articulate in this situation, and having reviewed the record, having time to review the things that were added as well, that those are my strongest concerns, I think, in this case. And it's not clear, I will just add one of the things for clarity as well. It's not clear to me overall that when we focus specifically on that habitability piece, that we have also looked at the other pieces. And the other elements of the ordinance and also the other pieces that people can use when talking about rent stabilization ordinance appeals. I'm just curious for a procedural point, Ms. Mormon, do we ever, I guess when we receive an appeal, if it's specifically outlining one thing, in this case, habitability issues, do we go into the other potential avenues? Do we review the appeal and as a whole, or do we simply go off of what is stated from the tenants?
Council President, Councilmember Johnson, what the rating is already out there. That is what staff referred to. When the tenants filed the appeal originally, they indicated subsequent materials would follow. I didn't have anything besides an appeal of a rent increase. Subsequent materials did elaborate upon the conditions, I won't say violations, but the conditions within the building. Staff were not asked to confirm, and we're dealing with the rent stabilization staff who review the numbers and so on. There had been no complaint talked to Director Weesey about this, and Director Weesey, without having a complaint, is loath to dispatch inspectors. And once it went through, she was able to process that. With respect to the ratings, if you would allow me, the unit in front of you at this time is in the building, 934 building. That has a B rating, and it is within the normal calendar for re-inspections. The withdrawn appeal is the C-rated building, so that's not in front of you. The other appeal for the 942 building has the A rating, and that's where the majority of the appeals are from.
Understood. As a follow-up, the one thing I will say separately and somewhat unrelated, but because we have the opportunity to kind of base it off of what has been shared in public comment and public testimony, I also want to extend my condolences to Mr. Day about what was shared as well, and about the status of just one, having to step into a role, having a family member who has fallen ill, and it seems like there has been a lot of things that have just over maybe the course of a period of about a year or so that has just been really challenging and maybe slightly unexpected. I think what concerns me as well, though, is that the current state of some of these buildings may not be accurate based off of the time that the inspections have elapsed. And so what, for my awareness as well, since when has DSI been able to physically be out to the buildings to confirm some of those things?
September 4th, last week.
Okay, but what they have, so in that time they were confirming only solely the things that were identified by the tenants as broken.
They did a standard certificate of occupancy inspection. They didn't use just the complaint. They went through their tick list that they would normally go through for everything. Okay. So for this particular unit, they called out a couple of items, and those are in the attachment that you have in front of you for the inspection. Handwritten, because we have no computer system right now, but they're there.
Yeah, I appreciate that every item is on the agenda separately and will be taken separately. I don't know if I would also be prepared to support a motion at this time, one way or the other.
Thanks, Ms. Johnson. Other discussion? Vice President Kim.
I echo the concerns of my colleagues as well. I'm just doing sort of a cursory search of like what's the definition of habitability, and it's actually, I would say, too broad, right? I am looking at some of the videos and photos that were submitted, and if it were to the standard that I would define it, I don't know if having running water coming through my basement would be considered habitable. So I think, aside of changing state code, I think there's a question that we should answer at the council with DSI. But I do have concerns sort of the timing of inspection and sort of the due diligence of our departments. And it's not to say that they don't do a good job, but just would be really interested in sort of having a little more time to visit the information personally. So just my 2 cents is I'd like a little bit more time if that would be amenable to the council member whose ward this is in. But personally, I would support some additional time considering all of the information, and I think some of the earnest consternation of our colleagues. Yeah.
I do have a question for the council.
Ms. Bowie.
And I do appreciate everything that was mentioned. Also to Mr. Day, I am so sorry. Also to, and I just want to thank you for humanizing the position that you are in right now and sharing that. And I know it was really tough. Also, I think it would be untruthful if I felt confident in today in making a decision, knowing that there's going to be other appeals that have a little bit more unique circumstance. So I am in favor of a layover. The question I do have for council members and also for Marcia, is there, because I have heard that people say they need more time to review. And if we were to lay this over, I know you considered us closing the public hearing. Would that, well, I guess if there's more information that we may need, say in terms of like the inspection or from DSI, because I am hearing questions around like what is our measurement tool, assessing if it's livable or not, or habitable or not. And also, I do have some questions, particularly around the different ratings, and if this was in a case where it was not an appeal and the tenants were to request an inspection and say, for instance, there was a C rating, would that be considered in violation, right? Because I know we're talking about the conditions as where they're at right now, and they're not considered violations. But can you, and I know there's a lot of different questions in here, but one of the things that I really want to be clear on is what makes something just a poor building condition, or a questionable building condition versus a building violation? Because I heard you mention both of those words.
Okay. First, I would say the council did close the public hearing on this one item, so that you've concluded for now. With respect to the use of the codes, I'm strongly encouraging the council, because these are Minnesota state codes, but for the local property maintenance code, which is consistent with state code. So it is a shared lexicon for understanding what is considered unsafe. Other determinations would be more subjective. Talking about what is and isn't a code violation, if you have a chipped tile in your bathroom, that's going to be written up by a fire certificate of occupancy inspector. You need to fix the chipped tiles. Would points attached to that influence the rating? In that particular case, I would say probably not. I don't have the list in front of me, but that isn't going to be the same kind of problem as, for example, door locks, smoke detectors, and so on, which have large amounts of points attached to them. And so in this particular unit, what I saw written up by the fire inspector was that scrape paint pipe in the bathroom, improper bulbs in the bedroom. Those are the two violations that were noted for the unit. So that's not a lot.
Okay, I guess I'm just trying to understand, and I'm just trying to get like clarity. So if there is observations from a not hearing officer, excuse me, from an inspector that there, for example, the smoke detectors aren't installed correctly, that's an observation. They put that into the report, but that technically isn't considered a violation.
Not having smoke and carbon monoxide detectors present, or if they're malfunctioning, would be considered a significant violation. Yeah.
But is that in question of habitability?
I would say it is definitely a component of it. There's a little bit of uniqueness about that particular situation, because the fire inspectors will not leave the site without having those items corrected unless it's an extra non-necessary smoke or carbon monoxide detector. They will have the fire, they do have free ones that they can install. They will require the property owner to then and there get something in, but those are rectified and the fire inspector rechecks those. Other kinds of things they would come back later for. I believe the reinspection on the entire premise is for a month out.
I want to go to Vice President Kim, and
It's just to help clarify land this plane, I think. So I briefly checked in with our lawyer, and any information that DSI could potentially submit wouldn't require us to have the public hearing open. So I would just offer that to you. I don't think we would need to reconsider that if it sounds like the crux of kind of what we're after is to learn a little bit more about our own process as it pertains to ours in the state definition. So being that as it may, for what it's worth, it doesn't sound like we would need to reopen or even continue public hearings. So I'd feel very comfortable moving forward with the public hearings and closing them, while also supporting layovers at your wish.
Yes, I agree. So I guess what could be on the table is a 1-week layover if people feel like they need more time. You know, I'm definitely open to more time. I think this could be just an open discussion around how much time do we think we want to dedicate to this item. So I feel comfortable with 1 week, but if there's other considerations.
So the motion is for a one-week layover. I will say I would support the motion. I would be reluctant to do a longer layover. I think in the past we have taken a long time to make decisions on some of these cases, and I think we can easily get it done in a week.
Yep.
So I would support that, and I do think to your both Ms. Bowie and Vice President Kim's points, I think one of the things I'm struggling with is that there is habitability, there are code violations, and then there are the words in our ordinance which do not have specific definitions, like substantial deterioration of the rental unit, and even the words deterioration to me imply change over time, which implies the need to go look at it now, not 6 years ago or 5 years ago or 3 years ago, and compare it to previously, or have some way of gauging that. And again, this is not on the landlord, this is not on the tenants, this is something that we have to figure out how we define these and what our processes are in our own ordinance. So the motion, though, is for a one-week layover. Discussion of the motion. Ms. Coleman.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Ms. Mormond. And I want to both echo the sympathies that have been expressed in this room for your mother's situation. I also want to acknowledge that we have tenants in this room, not for this specific item, but also folks who are struggling to know what their financial circumstances will be as a result of a potential rent increase. And so, just want to acknowledge that there are difficulties all around, and this is a very challenging situation in front of us. I will support the motion to lay over for a week, and just want to build on what the Council President was saying around, I think, different considerations that we have in front of us. There is, what is the letter of the law in this specific instance, where Councilmember Bowie began, was the process followed? What is the appropriate outcome in this case? I also am hearing a number of areas where it feels like we have the opportunity for policy change, to be thinking differently about what is in the letter of our ordinance, and are there places for improvements or more clarity moving forward? Also, how are we working with our city departments so that in the future, when we have units that are in potentially deteriorating conditions, we ensure that we have up-to-date information, that there is, that city staff is funded at the requisite levels in order to be able to conduct follow-up inspections in a timely manner. I think that there is so much in this, and sort of disaggregating the different challenges and the correct paths forward in all of those areas feels very difficult. And I think for that reason, a week layover makes quite a bit of sense here, and also really want to respect the need to move quickly, given that there are so many people's lives who are impacted by this, and people deserve clarity and resolution as quickly as possible from this body.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman. Other discussion of the motion? Vice President Kim.
Just very, very briefly, recognizing the current capacity of Ward 1, I'd be more than happy to offer assistance in time this week, and in addition to that, my LA. So just let us know how we can plug in and be helpful. Thank you.
Okay. All right, there's a motion on the table for a one-week layover. Public hearing has been closed. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is laid over to September 17th. Item 34 is RLH RSA 25-10, appeal of Jim Paradic and Abby Hansen, attorneys for Housing Justice Center, representing tenant Vincent Cornell, to a rent stabilization determination at 934 Ashland Avenue, Unit 2.
Once again, we'll have 2 minutes for anyone who wishes to. Ms. Mormon, I assume you don't have further, or do you?
I would only report what I just did, and that is that the city inspection last week did not identify deficiencies in this unit.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? No. All right, take a motion from Ms. Bowie to close the public hearing. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed.
Ms. Bowie.
So I just want to, in a nutshell, if Marcia, if you mind giving a nutshell of what the recommendation is for this?
My recommendation is to deny the appeal, which would mean that the landlord could go with DSI's determination and do a rent increase up to 28%. They don't have to go that high, but that would be the ceiling.
In this case scenario, it's the same exact premise that they're using around the habitability. So is this very similar from the earlier one?
Yes.
Okay. I think what a good rule of thumb, regardless if there's an appellant here to testify or not, that we should just lay over each matter since all of these items have very similar circumstances.
All right, so the motion is for a 1 week layover.
Yes.
Discussion of the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The resolution is laid over to September 17th. Item 35 is RSA 25-12, appeal of Jim Paraddick and Abby Hansen, attorneys for Housing Justice Center, representing tenant Irene Stemme to a rent stabilization determination at 938 Ashland Avenue, Unit 6.
And this appeal has been withdrawn?
Yes.
So we move on.
Okay. Item 36 is RLH RSA 25-13, appeal of Jim Paraddick and Abby Hansen, attorneys for Housing Justice Center, representing tenant Kayla Simonson to a rent stabilization determination at 942 Ashland Avenue, Unit 8.
Ms. Mormon?
The only note I have on Unit 8 is there are no new orders or no orders written on it at this time. So.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll take a motion from Ms. Bowie to close the public hearing and lay the matter over for 1 week.
Yes.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is laid over to September 17th. Item 37 is RLH RSA 25-14, appeal of Jim Paraddick and Abby Hansen, attorneys for Housing Justice Center, representing tenant Jessica Scar to a rent stabilization termination at 942 Ashland Avenue, Unit 9.
Ms. Mormon?
There are no unique violations identified. Well, yes, for Unit 9, excuse me, I misspoke. Scrape, repaint the hallway and kitchen are noted. And then for the building, the back stairs were condemned. And so that, as indicated in my initial comments, is this building.
Great. Thanks, Ms. Mormon. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? If so, come on up. You'll have 2 minutes. Remember to just start with your name, where you're coming from, and they do go by quickly.
I am Jessica Scory. I've been a tenant at Ashland Ave for 10 years. I was shocked and disheartened by the 28% increase. There had been no communication of my rent possibly increasing, and no communication that all things moving forward were being taken over by Judy's son. I was baffled the approval happened without any sort of inspection. There are many different issues. My landlord and the building manager have been aware of many of these issues for years. The last 2 weeks, there have been what seems to be fast fixes and things that I would consider short-term solutions to long-term problems. For example, my bedroom window, the top pane has not been able to shut properly or even stay up without my makeshift wooden dowels for at least 3 years. That has now been fixed by 4 screws holding up the top window pane in place, so I'm now unable to fully use my window. My deck has been an ongoing safety concern. It has been coming disconnected from the building itself, and the railing was extremely shaky. The fix has secured it to the building, but the original boards were reused and just turned upside down. I now have chunks of wood that have flaked off and do not feel safe having my nephews and nieces come over to play around the amount of wood shreds that could cause injury. Nor did I see a permit posted for this deck work, and it's unclear if it's been inspected. There are still other major concerns that have not been addressed. The ceiling fan in my living room wobbles when it's turned on. I rarely use it because I'm worried about it falling on my cats or guests. I purchased a new ottoman because I was afraid it would fall on my coffee table and break it. My windowsill and door frame around my back door are also deteriorating and flaking paint. I do not feel like all the documented evidence of safety issues were taken into account in the recommendation. As you know, the cost of living has increased, and having an increase like this with my social work salary would be severely overwhelming.
And I'm so sorry, but you are at time. You're welcome to submit that to us, though, for us to read.
There was one sentence left. That's okay.
Say the last sentence.
Approving this increase when the whole process has provided documentation that basic upkeep has not been maintained is not a fair judgment.
Thank you very much. Make sure to sign in. I will give the extra 13 seconds to anyone else who wants it, to be fair. Anyone else to testify on this item? Come on up.
I just wanted to say that we had repaired.
And start with your name. Sorry, sir.
I'm
One more
sorry,
time.
I'm
Pretend like
Scott.
we're doing it all over again.
I'm Scott Day again. We have addressed the staircase and the deck issues, that problem has been resolved. I welcome TSI to take another look at the situation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to testify on this item? Seeing none, I will take a motion from Ms. Bowie to close the public hearing and lay the matter over for 1 week.
Yeah, I did want to make
Oh,
a
I'm so
comment.
sorry.
Just a comment. I do really appreciate you taking the time out today to testify. I think it's, courageous to share that. And we also are working on the council to make sure we're normalizing tenants being able to share their grievances and if they have concerns or complaints for them to vocalize that. So thank you for doing that today. I would also share that in the testimonies coming forward that we have a clear ask, because I think that's something where it's, we're hearing the complaints, but we're also not really hearing exactly what they're asking council to do. So with that said, I mean, I want to just adopt it and lay it over for next week. But for as a council member, it's important as we're listening to these testimonies, also making sure that appellants know to make a clear ask to the council.
Thanks, Ms. Bowie. And I think that's a good point. I've been assuming that the testimony in the first 5 minutes in the letter that came from Housing Justice Center in general is the ask for all of these to grant the appeal and not allow the rent increase to go forward. But I think that that's a good point, that folks should explicitly say that. So the motion is to close the public hearing, lay the matter over for a week. Any discussion? Seeing none, nope. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is laid over to September 17th. Item 38 is RLH RSA 25-16, appeal of Jim Paradic and Abby Hansen, attorneys for Housing Justice Center, representing tenant Autumn Buell, to a rent stabilization determination at 942 Ashland Avenue, Unit 10.
Ms. Mormont.
Council President, I initially recommended that the council deny the appeal. As with the other cases, the tenant has moved out of the property, and I recommend that the council dismiss this appeal.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Mormont. And just to clarify, is it the case that a tenant can no longer appeal on behalf of the unit if they're gone? It obviously wouldn't apply to them anymore, but the rent increase might apply to the unit that they vacated.
In almost rude terms, I would say that appellants are people, not physical spaces. And so they can appeal on their own behalf for where they live, absolutely. Does their appeal transfer to the next occupant? I would say no, that person isn't known, but it also hasn't got counsel, they're not represented, they haven't made a decision that they want to appeal. So we couldn't presume that in this case.
And so if they initiated the appeal while they were a tenant but have since moved, they would lose that standing?
That is my recommendation. The council make that finding.
Okay, thank you. I see Chair Johnson as well.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify again for the record. So this unit was the C rating building. So in this regard, is that correct? It was a C rating?
No.
Or was it an A rating?
This was an A-rated building, 942, 944.
Okay. And the tenant has moved out. Was that prior to, did that have any reason for, or what is the timeline again from when they came? Because I remember a similar case, different circumstance, different ward, but we did actually rule in favor of the tenant despite having moved out. So I'm just wondering, is it clear that they do lose their standing if they move out?
Could you repeat that?
We had a previous rent stabilization case. We did actually rule in the favor of the tenant despite having moved out. So I'm just curious as to, is that a standard rule that if they moved out, is there somewhere in there that says that if you move out that this is a dismissal automatically, or is that just a practice?
I would say that it would likely be the subject of litigation. I would defer to the city attorney's office. My recommendation is the same as it was in the previous case, and that is that the tenant who appealed is no longer a tenant and therefore doesn't have standing.
Yeah, I believe this came up, I believe previously, and I think the advice of the city attorney's office was that they don't have standing, that they're no longer a tenant, they don't have standing to bring the matter anymore.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Mormond? Otherwise, we'll go to the public hearing. Okay, thanks, Ms. Mormond. Don't go far. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? No. All right. We should always have someone here shaking their heads. It makes it very quick and clear. All right. I'll take a motion from Ms. Bowie.
I think in this situation, since this appellant doesn't have standing, they don't live in the apartment anymore, that I will adopt the recommendation from the hearing officer to deny the appeal.
So the recommendation is to close the public hearing and adopt the recommendation to deny the appeal?
Correct.
Okay. Any discussion of that motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
5 in favor, 1 opposed, being Councilmember Johnston. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is adopted. Item 39 is RLH RSA 25-15, appeal of Jim Paradic and Abby Hansen, attorneys for Housing Justice Center, representing tenants Samuel Perkins and Chloe Cable, to a rent stabilization determination at 942 Ashland Avenue, Unit 11.
Ms. Mormond.
Just a quick note that in the September 4th orders, specific items listed for this unit were scrape, repair wall, bed and bedroom door, decrease the fire load in the bedroom, that would be excessive combustibles, and clear the electrical panels. There needs to be 36 inches clearance around electrical panels, and those 3 things were called out.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Mormond. Any questions? All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Please come on up. Welcome.
Hi. Hello, City Council members. My name is Chloe Cable, and I live with my partner, Samuel Perkins, at 942 Ashland Avenue, apartment 11. Today, I'm here to petition the City Council to reject the hearing officer's recommendation to approve a staggering 28.5% increase in rent at my unit, as well as my neighbors. To support this, I will point out my frustration with a particular aspect of the recommendation. The recommendation comments on a lack of communication from tenants to landlord, as well as tenants to city. While tenants have indeed reported issues to both landlord and city in the past, the issue is not communication by tenants. Rather, it is neglect by the property owner and incompetence by city inspectors. Many of the habitability issues have been clearly visible to anyone with eyes. Mold, broken windows and doors, holes in the walls and floors were, and some still are, evident with a basic sweep of these apartments. The fact that these issues have been overlooked by both property owners and city inspectors over the years is indicative of neglect of the properties and their occupants. In other cases, we only learned of issues after we hired our own inspectors. For example, in our apartment, we had no idea that our outlets were ungrounded, as they were concealed by grounded 3-pronged covers. What I thought was a funky light fixture in our kitchen was actually revealed to be a live wire wrapped in cloth. These fire hazards were not disclosed to us upon moving in, and it is not the job of tenants to understand safety standards, to know the ins and outs of responsible property management. It is on the owners and city inspectors to know and execute these standards. It is their job. Not doing so is incompetence that has led to significant property degradation and should not be placed on tenants as an error in communication. Let me be clear. I acknowledge the right of property owners to return on investment, but that right is not inherent to property ownership. It is earned. The habitability clause of the ordinance indicates that by stating owners cannot qualify for an exception without their properties being up to code and safe to inhabit. With the issues at these properties, I find that the property owners have not earned this right to return on investment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Make sure to sign in. Welcome up.
Hello. Testing? Okay. City Council. My name is Samuel Perkins, and I've been a St. Paul resident for just about 8 years now. And my wife, Chloe, and I have lived at 942 apartment 11 for just about a year now. Now, I just want to ask, what did we as voting constituents vote on in 2021? Half of us are renters. We voted in 2021 with like a 60% margin on the concept of housing stability for tenants. That idea, the idea that rent goes up gradually each year in a way that can be stomached. Now, you can get into the nitty-gritty details of like the letters of the law and the actual implementation, the specific numbers that I'm actually sympathetic to the argument that maybe some of the numbers are too low. But I want to seriously ask everybody on the council right now, can anyone with a straight face say that a single year rent increase of 28.5%, and I'm the lucky one, my neighbor is 52%. Can anyone with a straight face say that their vote matters when that kind of single year rent increase is just allowed? It's just allowed. I couldn't. I would be joking. So, that's like mine is almost 10 times the expected amount, and my neighbor's is approaching 20. Okay? So us as tenants have done our job, one, taking off of work to be here, but also submitting, ample materials of habitability concerns to address the wording, the letter of the law. Okay? So we did that part. But what is y'all part now? Y'all part is to seriously consider the intended goal that 60% of St. Paul voters voted on and not allow such a massively destabilizing number to take effect. That is complete violation of the intended spirit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Make sure to sign in.
Yes.
And is there anyone else here who would like to be heard on this matter? Okay. Seeing none, thank you so much to the testifiers. I'll take a motion from Ms. Bowie to close the public hearing and lay the matter over for 1 week.
Does anyone else have discussions?
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is laid over to September 17th. Item 40 is RLH RSA 25-17, appeal of Jim Praddock and Abby Hansen, attorneys for Housing Justice Center, representing tenants Lillian Johnson and Eleanor Rowan to a rent stabilization determination at 942 Ashland Avenue, Unit 12.
Ms. Mormon.
The violation identified in last week's inspection was to replace the bathroom ceiling tiles.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Mormon? Seeing none. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Doesn't look like it. All right, I'll take a motion from Ms. Bowie to close the public hearing and lay the matter over for 1 week. Any discussion of the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearing is closed and the resolution is laid over to September 17th.
Ms. Mormon, is there anything else to come before us, for separate consideration? I told you not to go too far.
Council President, I don't believe anyone is here to testify on another legislative hearing item.
All right, in that case, we will hold a public hearing on all the remaining legislative hearing items, which are items 41 through 45. If you are here to speak on any of those items, this is your public hearing, so please come up to testify now. Seeing none, I'll take a motion from Ms. Coleman to close the public hearings and approve those recommendations of the legislative hearing officer as amended. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
7 in favor, no one opposed. The public hearings are closed and the consent agenda is adopted as amended.
That brings us to the end of our agenda, and good news around the table. There's already lots of it. Chair Johnson.
I'm very excited, and I was honestly really supportive of the resolution today to honor Welcome Week. I think along that vein, the Southeast, the District Council Southeast Community Organization is actually holding a Do You Know Your Rights event on September 13th, this Saturday from 5 to 7 at Progressive Baptist Church. It'll be available in person and virtual, and they actually have the Southern Minnesota Regional Legal Services and Immigrant Law Center there presenting as well. And they have ability to translate. They have like a flyer that has a QR code on it, but the links are there as well. So folks can attend in person or virtually, but I'm excited that they're taking up the ability to have this conversation on the east side. We've had a lot of recent issues, especially surrounding both detaining of community members, things that have been really traumatic in the community to witness in some of our spaces and areas around the neighborhood. And so I think really being able to know your rights in this capacity, and especially just with the recent ruling from the federal Supreme Court, there's a lot of things that are going to be really important for folks to know what they are able to legally not comply with. And so I hope that folks are taking advantage of those opportunities. So again, that's September 13th, 5 to 7 at Progressive.
Thanks, Ms. Johnson. I saw Ms. Yang.
Thank you. I wanted to share about the cleanup day happening this Saturday. It's hosted by the City of St. Paul and Greater Eastside Community Council, 10 a.m. 10 a.m. over at Cesar Chavez School. There will be bags and gloves provided free of charge.
Thanks, Ms. Yang. Ms. Bowie.
And also, after you attend that event on Saturday, you could come over to Selby Avenue. There's the Selby Avenue Jazz Fest that's taking place. They're actually celebrating, I believe, their 36th year. It's hosted by the Walker West, and also get a chance to see what our investments from the commercial corridor looks like as people are celebrating. There's going to be a headliner, T. Michael Rambo, who many of us know and love, is going to be the MC for that event.
Nice, fun. Ms. Just.
Thank you, Council President. I think it was last week, or maybe the week before, that we approved the sound level variance for the Nativity County Fair. So Nativity is the Catholic church and school in the McAllister Groveland neighborhood, and every year they host a huge fair where their parking lot, which is pretty big, is filled with rides and games and music and lots of great fun for the whole family. So that's this weekend, September, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So September 12th from 5 to 10, September 13th from 12 to 10, and September 14th from 11:30 to 3. I'll plan to be there, hopefully a little bit each day. It's super fun, and lots of fun things to do. So hope you can join us.
Great, thanks, Ms. Just. I'll share two things to bookend your day tomorrow. Tomorrow is September 11th, and there is a memorial stair climb that the fire department is hosting at the Science Museum stairs starting at 8:46 a.m. They will climb the stairs 14 times to represent the 110 floors of the World Trade Center. So folks are welcome to come. I don't think you're going to be asked to climb all the stairs 14 times if you come, but I think your presence would be meaningful. And then at the end of the day tomorrow is the very, very last Lower Town Sounds of the entire summer. If you're like someone I know and you have been bereft of attending Lower Town Sounds the entire summer, you have one more chance, and it's tomorrow from 6 to 9 p.m. in Mears Park. Any other good news? All right, thanks so much for a great meeting. We're adjourned.